All right, so this is going to be the first of the close reading videos that I have for the first part of the text here. And as we've discussed before, as we've done before, close reading for a nonfiction text uses the same skills as for a fictional text, but just it's a little bit different of a direction. So rather than talking about theme, we're talking about central idea. Rather than talking about literary devices, because it's literature, we're talking about rhetorical devices. And rhetorical devices come from the word rhetoric, which describes the type of language that somebody is using. So we're still focused on how individual words and phrases are put together, but now we're connecting them to an author's purpose, which in this case might be convincing an audience, might be teaching an audience, and that's what we're going to be investigating here. The portion of text that I'm going to be looking at is on page 455, and it starts at line 5 with "It's an elegant approach," an elegant approach. So I'm going to read through that and just kind of talk out loud how I would be close reading this text as an example for how you can do that on your own. Remember to think about what we read as we read it, right? It's not just words that slide over our brain and they're gone when we're doing the assignment. We want to really consider what an author is trying to do. When you practice like this, it's like, doing any exercise or lifting weights. You do it so that you get better, not so that it's done as quickly as possible. Okay, so starting on page 455. It's an elegant approach to a health crisis that threatens much of the world, but it will take more than biological success to make it work. So I like this topic sentence a lot. Describing it as an elegant process, uh, it's a cool way to describe it. And elegant kind of brings to mind. I mean, the first thing when I hear elegant, I think of like a simple but fancy and very sophisticated example, kind of like a really really nice high class dress, right? It doesn't have a lot of frills or lace or buttons or whatever. It's very simple, but it's beautiful at the same time. And I just love the connotation of that in a scientific sense, an elegant solution. Uh, and I also like how it sets up, the difficulties that this challenge takes. They already went through in this article deeply the challenges that this creating this mosquito hybrid thing went through, and how challenging it was to create it. And now, beyond just those biological processes, beyond just those scientific processes, there are more issues that this solution has to face before it can be successful. I like that it sets that up. That's because OX513A is not like other mosquitoes. In fact, it's like nothing else on Earth, a winged creature made by man, then released into the wild. Despite the experiment's scientific promise, many people regard the tiny insect as a harbinger of a world where animals are built by nameless scientists, nurtured in beakers, then set loose with consequences, no matter how noble the intention, that are impossible to anticipate or control. So this brings up one of the primary fears about scientific progress is, do we go too far? Do we know the possible consequences? And the language used here is so powerful. So the tiny insect as a harbinger. If you don't know what a harbinger is, it's like um, like a town crier, an omen, the thing that signals a larger future. And so this tiny insect could be the thing that signals all of these unnatural things, right? The scientists are nameless and they're faceless. They're just kind of doing science without being human. They are nurtured in beakers and then set loose, right? So nurtured in beakers, idea of a very scientific thing as opposed to something natural, and then set loose as like, I don't know, the idea of not controlled. All of that language is very, very purposeful, with consequences, no matter how noble the intention, that are impossible to anticipate or control. This whole thing makes me think about Jurassic Park. That's why the opening question was about Jurassic Park. And so the idea is they might create this and they might have the best intentions possible, which they probably did in Jurassic Park. But what could go wrong? There's an old saying of there are known knowns, things that you know that you know. There are known unknowns, things that you know that you don't know, and there are unknown unknowns, things that you do not know that you do not know. And that's that category, that third one, where we don't even know what we don't know in this situation, and that's what critics are worried about. This mosquito is Dr. Frankenstein's monster, plain and simple, said Helen Wallace, the executive director of the British environmental organization GeneWatch. To open a box and let these man made creatures fly free is a risk with dangers we haven't even begun to contemplate. This allusion here to Dr. Frankenstein's monster is again very effective on her part for saying why she is not sure about, releasing this in the world. The idea of Dr. Frankenstein playing God, creating a creature that he shouldn't have created, resulting in horrible, terrible consequences, lots of death around him. He didn't intend that. He intended to make a new discovery, create life himself, and yet it goes wrong. And that's that same feeling that she is drawing on there, the other, the scariness, the fear, the lack of knowing about consequences. And that's what she is trying to kind of evoke in her listener. Okay, that's the first close reading section. See you in part 2.